So this is Introductory Microbiology Lab. This is the Infectious Disease Project. This is the video accompaniment to the PowerPoint. So I'm going to be going through the slides and kind of discussing the content on each of them, going more in depth. And throughout this video, the disease that I will be discussing is tetanus. So the first question that we need to answer is, what causes tetanus? Tetanus is caused by a bacterium called Clostridium tetani. It is a gram-positive bacterium, and in the image in the slide, you can see what it looks like. In the next slide, we'll be talking about how this organism can be cultured and isolated. So the methods of isolation depend on the sample. So for instance, if we are looking to isolate it from a patient, we can take a swab from the wound, which is the point of entry of infection, inoculate that sample into the appropriate medium, which is usually a pre-reduced oxygen blood agar plate, and then we incubate that in anaerobic conditions. In this slide, you can see I have included an image showing the spores and growth on a blood agar plate. The bacterium should grow quickly in a fine swarming layer over the surface of the plate. This next slide is discussing where the bacteria is found and how it is transmitted. So this bacteria is everywhere in the environment, particularly found in ash, soil, in the intestinal tracts and feces of animals and humans, also on the surface of skin, and on rusty tools like nails, needles, barbed wire, etc. It is acquired through the infection of a cut or an open wound. Now we're going to discuss the method of action, or the mechanism by which the organism causes the disease. So C. tetani enters the body through an open wound. In anaerobic conditions, these spores germinate. Toxins are produced and disseminated via blood and lymphatics. The tetanospasmin, or the tetanus toxin, acts at several sites within the central nervous system, like the peripheral motor end plates, the spinal cord, the brain, also in the sympathetic nervous system. What happens is the toxin interferes with the release of neurotransmitters, blocking inhibitor impulses, which leads to unopposed muscle contractions and spasms. In this next slide, we are going to go over signs and symptoms of the disease. The average time from infection to manifestation of signs and symptoms is about 10 days, but the incubation period is really anywhere from 3 to 21 days. Signs and symptoms usually begin gradually, and as the disease progresses, they worsen exponentially. You usually see it beginning in the jaw and then working downward through the body. So with tetanus, you get what is called the tetanic triad of symptoms, which involves trismus, or the locked jaw, which is a mild to severe spasms of the lower jaw, and then you get rhesus sardonicus, or the Sardinian grin, which is tension in rigidity in the muscles around the mouth, which results in a sustained grin, and then you have opus thotanus, which is a severe spasm of all the muscles in the body, which results in that super rigid, intense, arching posture that you see depicted in the image I've included on the slide. Aside from the obvious symptoms, like the tetanic triad, you can get things like fever, high or low blood pressure, tachycardia, which is a rapid heart rate. You can get dysphagia, difficulty swallowing, labored breathing. You can have severe seizure-like spasms, which can be triggered by things like a loud noise or a bright light, or a physical touch. These seizure-like spasms that we've talked about, they can last for minutes at a time, and sometimes they can be so severe that they result in broken bones. Other complications include developing pneumonia or like a pulmonary embolism. So how do we diagnose the disease? How do we know if a patient has tetanus? Well, a doctor or a medical professional will diagnose tetanus based on the results of a physical exam, medical and vaccination history, and then of course your signs and symptoms, and how progressed they are. Usually further testing is only required to rule out other conditions, as there is not a lab test that can be done to confirm the presence of tetanus itself. Now that we've diagnosed the patient, we have to consider different treatment options. Treatment is determined on